Hey guys, so this week, as I'm sure you're aware, there has been a lot of FUD around Cubic. And in this video, I'm just going to share my honest thoughts on whether now is the time that you should be selling your Cubic, or, if you should be holding a bit longer, or what I really think is going on here. So let's get into it in this video. So yeah, guys, there's just been so much FUD around Cubic recently, and most of it is actually baseless if you look into it. The main FUD that I'm seeing is just around the recent burn and the inflation rate of Cubic, and I'm going to address that in this video. And there are some legitimate thoughts and concerns about this, but hopefully I'll cover them all well in this video. So firstly, just on the day of making this video, we can see that Cubic's price has recovered a bit. It was down under 2, kind of around 2.5 here, 2,500 per billion. And now it's recovered to around 3,100, and it's ranging around there. I don't expect to see it drop below 2,000 because there's a lot of whales who are holding around that support level, who are big holders of Cubic. It'll drop a little bit probably because of the inflation, but I don't expect it to drop a huge amount. If it did drop under $2,000 per billion, that would probably mean that some whales will start selling. And still, fundamentally the project would be really strong, and I still believe in the project long term, and it would make me want to buy Cubic. But that would tell me that for some reason whales have lost their commitment or belief in the project, which be interesting and something to think about. But yeah, as we can see, the price action hasn't been great lately, and that's where most of the FUD is coming from. So Crypto Phoenix was sharing this this week, and they said they've read a lot of people thinking Cubic is a scam because it dropped hard. The reasoning is off here. So yeah, just a really important point. People are saying Cubic is a scam now, which I've heard, with no actual reasons given other than that there's inflation and that they don't like the creator. People have called the creator a fraudster as well, which I've heard, but he's been in the crypto industry for 20 years before Bitcoin even existed. He's working on this sort of stuff, and he's never had any proof or genuine allegations of fraud. So that's kind of crazy. But that's just the way people start talking when prices drop on projects. So Crypto Phoenix went on to say that the reasoning is off here with CEX listings, CAS, which is clearly no scam. Probably the most legitimate and solid crypto to buy now, to be just a guaranteed 10 or 20x, I think, is CAS. It dropped after its CEX listings from 4 cents to about 1 cent, which was about a 77% retrace. Cubic dropped after its CEX listings from point at like $12,000 per billion cubic to $2,700 per cubic, per billion cubic, which is a 78% retrace. So as you can see, we've already recovered since that 2,700. Then they said the height of the retrace is pretty much the same here. Now, does this mean the story has to repeat? No. It also doesn't mean that a retrace like this after CX listings alone makes a coin a scam. So basically the point he's making, he's not guaranteeing a retrace from Cubic to greater heights. He's just making the point that CAS has gone through similar peaks and troughs like this, and CAS is probably as legitimate of a new project as you're going to get. Cubic is definitely not a scam. It's not guaranteed to be successful, but I think it will be very successful. And I think it's a sort of project that could just shoot up overnight to all-time highs. So then he goes on to say, but it also doesn't mean that a retrace like this after CX listings alone makes a coin a scam. Stay objective. Try to keep emotions aside and take things for what they are. Cubic has an interesting risk-return profile, especially now in this below 3K zone after this retrace. So good point that he's making, because it's obviously recovered since then. Now I expect today, the day that I'm recording this, which is a Wednesday, I expect that there'll be some sell-off from miners, which might drive the price down again. So that'll be interesting to see. But then he said no certainties, but favorable probabilities. And then he said, I wrote those detailed texts so you can see how I think. Please get rid of the certainty way of thinking. No one knows what will happen, but successful people are willing to take risk management and opportunities that look favorable to them. But basically what he's saying is that this is a great time to buy Cubic, but it's risky like everything, which is what I would say to you as well. And I would also say that I think Cubic can go really high and be a really successful project, but of course you're investing in some new project, and of course it's risky to do that. So that this is some really, really interesting stuff that I learned this week. So I originally thought that the first ever mentions by Sergey Ivancheglo of Cubic came back in 2012. And this, I just want to get away from some of the FUD first, because I just thought this was so interesting to read. But I thought that was the first time that CFB talked about Cubic. And he mentioned Cubic by name in 2012. So that's how long he's been planning it. And he was planning working with a quorum, or creating a quorum technology, which he has created now. But then, amazingly, I found out then that in 2002, he released a paper talking about distributed computing. And I'll just read through a little bit of this for a moment. So he says here, distributed computing at a minimum cost. Anyone who regularly needs the computer press has probably heard about distributed computing. Now, to crack cryptographic algorithms, predict weather, search for extraterrestrial civilizations, and solve other tasks that require enormous computing resources, there is no need to have supercomputers costing many millions of dollars. The internet has made it possible to obtain solutions to such problems in an acceptable time frame at negligible financial costs, which is achieved by distributing calculations between computers that are connected to the World Wide Web. This article describes how, using the Java language, you can develop a program that implements a distributed search for solutions to problems that require a large amount of computation. And then it goes on down here, it says that applets run on the user's computer rather than on a server, allowing you to harness the power of thousands of client computers rather than one busy server. Basically what he's talking about here is what Cubic is implemented now is that when miners mine Cubic and they get paid rewards with Cubic, that gives their power to the Cubic network, which is creating a supercomputer that can solve all these issues. Some, that he's talking about here, and many other issues that exist in the world. And he's evolved way beyond this point in how he sees this idea now with Cubic. But he was talking about this 21 years ago, long before Bitcoin even existed. So it's just really important to realize that this isn't some flash in the pan sort of thing. When people say they don't trust Sergey Ivancheglo, this guy has, Cubic's been his ultimate goal for so long. We're talking like 21, 22 years he's been planning this. So I think that's just really interesting to share. And I'm going to share more about this in the next video I make as well. So then just some of CFB's thoughts on recent FUD. So, he said that it's just a tiny percentage of people who are nervous. Among all crypto, Cubic and Bitcoin will be the last to fail. Even shallow analysis shows that we are in trouble if the whole crypto industry fails. In this case, we'll have to wait for Agar to be accomplished and surf the AI wave. So what he's saying here is, firstly, I don't know whether shallow analysis shows that Cubic and Bitcoin will be the last cryptos to fail, but Bitcoin probably would, but there's many strong projects out there, so I don't completely share his thoughts there, but I love his enthusiasm. But the important part of what he wrote here that I really think is important is that he's saying that even if the whole crypto industry fails, if Agart is successful, then they can surf the AI wave. Now, of course, for Agart to be successful, there needs to be miners of Cubic and people selling Cubic, and for it to be profitable to sell, to mine Cubic. So I wonder, would the crypto industry failing kind of mess up Agart? So that's an interesting thought, but that's what his ultimate plan is here, to go beyond crypto, basically. So then Q Silver, someone I really recommend following on X. They are a developer on the Cubic network. And they just said that some people have expressed concern over the Cubic emissions, because this is what all the FUD is about. Basically, about Sergey Ivancheglo making statements like this, which just piss people off, basically. But it just shows he's confident. He's doing his work behind the scenes. I have no problems with that. But the other thing that people have an issue with is the emissions or the inflation per week. And he said the trillion per week, but that is just due to not having decimals. Adjusting for 100 million satoshis per coin, it is 10,000 coins per week. So basically, if this was like Bitcoin, we'd be inflating by 10,000 Bitcoin per week. And he said that's 5x less than Bitcoin during his first 4 years. And then he said also the Q emission curve is better than Bitcoin. So basically what he's saying here is that QUBIC is in the first year of its project, and then Bitcoin is, how many years is Bitcoin in now? 14, 15 years. And QUBIC has less emissions than Bitcoin had during those first 4 years. So we're just seeing normal emissions. And then as QUBIC grows in size, if there was no burns, the percentage of growth per month or per year wouldn't be such a high percentage. So that's just an interesting point that he makes to start. So then he said, at the end of 8 years, a total emission of 312 trillion would match the Bitcoin standard. That means a net gain of 212 trillion over the next six years. So if another 100 trillion are burned over the next 6 years, QUBIC matches Bitcoin. Any more burns and the emission is less than Bitcoin. And then he went on to say, how hard would it be to burn that 100 trillion over 6 years? Already a handful of IPO have burned 12 trillion, but some would say the early IPO burned more due to low flat price, or slow fiat price. Flat price, fiat price, I'm not sure what he means here. I guess fiat price he meant. Okay, so let us calculate the required burn per IPO 6 years, and that'll be about 1.4 trillion per month from smart contract burns. So he's basically saying that if we burned 1.4 trillion QUBIC per month, we'd hit our target of 100 trillion over six years. So then, actually, I just put a page in there that I want to go to the last. But then he said that currently IPOs are relatively rare for QUBIC, but a pipeline of smart contracts are being created. And once that is in place, making a new smart contract every couple of weeks will not be a problem. So if there are 2 IPOs per month, each burning 700 million QUBIC, that matches, I think he meant 700 billion QUBIC here actually, that matches Bitcoin emissions. So basically these, any upcoming IPOs would have to just be a little bit more successful than the most recent MLM smart contract, which wasn't as successful as expected. But he's basically, the understanding that we're getting is the more the QUBIC network is active, the more applications that are going to be on the platform. There's more smart contracts that are going to be burning. Then you've got the oracles burning QUBIC through smart contracts. QX, just through its use, is going to be burning QUBIC. The My Last Match game, just through its use, is going to be burning QUBIC. All these apps are going to be working together and just burning QUBIC constantly. So we're going to see that level of QUBIC that leveling out. And CFB was saying that it's going to be around 100 trillion. He always said that it might be slightly under 100 trillion. It might be 110 trillion, something like that. But that remains to be seen. But even if it went to 200 trillion, that wouldn't be a big deal. So then Q Silver said, with upcoming smart contracts like QPool, QLaunch, Gateway, also keep in mind that IPOs are Q burned and used as reserves to pay for smart contract usage. Ultimately, it is smart contract usage that is needed. Big IPO burn, of course, immediately reduces supply, but constant usage creates supply equilibrium. So he's basically getting at the point that the IPOs create huge initial burns, but it's the continuous smart contract usage of these decentralized apps that's going to create equilibrium over time. This isn't going to happen overnight. It could, go well overnight, but it probably isn't going to happen overnight. But the whole goal of this is to create an equilibrium and a completely uninflationary ecosystem, and probably a deflationary ecosystem. And you can see the wheels turning to make this happen. And then I want to get back to this point. So I just was making this point that if you're worried about QUBIC inflation and the low My Last Match burn rate, because I've seen so much FUD about this, you have to research QUBIC tokenomics better. Even if there is never any QUBIC burns, the project has strong tokenomics. QUBIC has no decimal point. 1 QUBIC is not divisible. while most cryptos have many zeros after decimal point. For example, Bitcoin can be divided into a million separate parts called satoshis. There are 21 million total Bitcoin. When you multiply the 21 million Bitcoin by a million satoshis, you get 2.1 quadrillion satoshis, meaning that when you break Bitcoin down into satoshis, you get 2.1 quadrillion satoshis. Then the max supply of Cubic that can ever exist at one time is 1 quadrillion, meaning that even at its max, there's 2.1 less Cubic than Bitcoin. Cubic currently inflates 5x less than Bitcoin did in its first 4 years, and the more Cubic supply grows, the lower percentage of total supply the inflation will be. So even without burns ever, the inflation isn't terrible. Now, I'm making the point, isn't terrible. We want to see burns to make it better, but Cubic isn't inflating as much as people think. It is right now. It's a lot of inflationary pressure, but over time it isn't. It's just a lack of demand for Cubic that's the bigger issue. It's not the inflation that's the main issue. And then I got lots of comments back, like this one said, how can you compare it with Bitcoin? Inflation and market cap is a huge equilibrium. If inflation goes up and market cap does not, which is exactly what's happening with Cubic, the price goes down. Stop writing bullshit and comparing it with Bitcoin, which is 55% market dominance. Laugh out loud. Now, I get the point this person's making, but as I commented back to them, they're completely missing the point of what I was saying. The only reason I'm comparing Cubic to Bitcoin is I'm just trying to use something as a benchmark, and why not pick the number one cryptocurrency out there as the benchmark, just to show how Cubic's tokenomics work and how they look scary, but they're not actually that scary, especially then once burns happen. Of course, if the market cap doesn't go up and a crypto inflates, the value of your investment is going to go down over time. And that's a really obvious issue. But the main issue right now with Cubic is just it needs more demand, needs more people buying it. And then that inflation is going to be a big issue. Then once those burns kick in, it's really, really not going to be an issue. So I'm not comparing Cubic to Bitcoin in any way other than just using it as a benchmark to explain Cubic's tokenomics, and that they're, even without inflation, they're not that crazy bad. Or sorry, even without burns, they're not that crazy bad. But once those burns come, they're going to look really, really favorable. And then Crypto Wolf here just shared this from the Cubic team, and this was in the Cubic Discord as well, that QX is live, and that we're thrilled to announce the launch of QX, the first decentralized exchange on the Cubic network, and then just all the details about it. I saw some people asking that they thought the QX was launched ages ago, and why is this announcement coming now? That didn't make sense to them. The reason is pretty straightforward. It's just that QX initially was launched just in the command line interface, so you could only use it by using a command line interface, and then they created the user interface, and then QX was released in beta, and now QX is officially released as the finished article. Now, of course, they'll be updating it, but it isn't in beta anymore. It's just fully live from this point on. So the next video that I'm going to create this week, guys, I'm going to give you so much bullish news. I didn't want to share it all in this one video. I wanted to talk a bit more about the FUD that's been going on lately, but there's been some real bullish news on Cubic this week, and I'm going to share that in the next video, which is going to be an exciting one. I'll probably put it out on Friday or Saturday or over the weekend at some point. You don't want to miss that one, and I'll see you all on the outside.